Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. There behind the glass stands a real blade of grass. Be careful as you pass. Move along, move along. Come inside, the show's about to start. Guaranteed to blow your head apart.
I'm Dyanne Klinko, and I have with me as our exclusive Emerson Lake Palmer, Titans of Prague. Backstage Pass presents Frank Askew, who is a co-author of our Bible and famous book, The Emerson Lake Palmer, Show That Never Ends. He has a couple other books he's going to talk about as well. And we are going to have a fun time here talking about Frank and Noddy's Puncture. We're going to talk about Frank's introduction to Carl and some of the projects that Carl and Frank are involved in. And look forward to all of that. So with further ado, introduce Frank. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Really good.
Good. Now, we had talked about a couple of things, and I think that one of the things we had discussed was the how you were first introduced to Carl and how you became involved in writing this book.
I mean, I first met Carl in 1982, and it was backstage at Wembley when he was playing with Asia, October 82. And originally, I'd written to his drum company, Premier Drums. They're a company in the UK based in Leicester who made his drums at that time. Mm-hmm. And I wrote to them just saying, you know, I'm a fan of Carl's. Have you got any posters, and have you got any information on his drum kit? And I just happened to mention that I was going to see him at Wembley. And I wasn't seeking anything more than some information on his drums. And they wrote back and said, well, we're going to Wembley as well. Do you want to come and meet him? And that was out of the blue. I know. So I obviously went to Wembley and managed to meet him backstage. And he took me on stage. The curtain was down at the time. And he took me on stage with a little torch. And he showed me around his drums. And then we actually sat, although we had seats in the auditorium, we actually sat in the royal box because we were guests of Palmer, and there were all the other friends and family of the other members of Asia were also there. But yeah, so we sat in the royal box, and then after the show we went back again to see him, and he gave me a poster and signed that, and that was really good. So that was the first meeting. I mean, that wasn't anything to do with the book, but it was just my kind of first meeting with Carl. Mm-hmm. And then going on to a decade later, 1992, when ELP reformed, mm-hmm. I got together with George Forrester, who's one of the names on the cover there. We got chatting. We knew each other. We got chatting about why is there not a book on ELP? There's been a book on Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, all those sort of bands, but not one on ELP. And why isn't one coming out now that they're reforming after such a long time? So, myself and George, we met up with a guy called Jeff Parkin, who used to run the ELP Appreciation Society, or like a fan club back in the 70s, and he was tasked with starting up again for the reunion. Mm-hmm. And we just sat around and we got talking about, wouldn't it be great to do a book? So we just thought, we'll just write one ourselves, let's get on with it, because it seemed to us that no one was actually going to do it. So myself and George Forrester started writing the book. And we got to a certain point in the book, and we then sent it off to ELP's management, and they took an interest in it. It wasn't finished by any stretch of the imagination. It was sort of maybe a third through. So we sent it to them. They were really interested, and we got some interviews with the individual members, and then ELP said they were going on a tour of Japan, and they said, well, why don't you come along to Japan with us, and you can sort of get a bit of an inside scoop on what it's like to be on tour and the workings of ELP and stuff. So
how
so
did
that was
that
all part
make
of
you
it.
feel? I mean, being invited on a tour?
I know. Yeah, I mean, and it wasn't something I pushed. It was just one of those things that happened to fall into my lap. So we went to Japan, and that's really, I think, where I first got to know Carl pretty well, because I was also a drummer, played drums. Mm-hmm. So and had always followed Carl's career. So I was pretty much on Carl's side, really. So that was the first big introduction to Carl, and a couple of stories from the Japan tour. First thing was I'll show you this. He gave me a symbol. I don't know. I'm not very good at this, but okay.
Wow.
So that's
oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes. He used that, didn't he?
He used that. You can see that on the Montreal Olympic Stadium concert. He's got it, I think, mounted up on the right-hand side on top of a crash symbol. So you can definitely see it there. So he used it a little bit then during the Asia period. And then there's a little crack in it, actually, which you probably won't be able to see on there, but there's a little crack in it, and it went out of tune. So he gave it to me. You can just signed it. So that's a very special memento from that tour.
I can imagine.
You can actually hear it on the track, on the 3 album. There's a track called Des de la Vida, and at the beginning of that track, there's the intro. You can hear a kind of bell symbol early on, very very sort of near the intro of the track, and that's that particular symbol. That's what Carl told me. So there's that one. So that was a good memory from that tour. Also, during that tour, it was Keith's birthday, so he had a big, So during one of the sound checks, they brought out a cake and what have you. So that was quite a nice moment. But the best time for me was one of the shows. There was 5 shows across 8 days. So I was out there 8 days. There were 5 shows, and after one of the shows, Greg Lake was being wined and dined by his bass guitar company. I think the company was called Tune Bass or something like that. But anyway, they said to Greg, come out for dinner with us, which meant that there was a spare seat in the limo. And Keith and Carl said, why don't you come back with us? Because I used to go back to the hotel with the roadies or the techs or whatever, which is fine because I've got on really well with them. But Keith and Carl said, come back with us, So I was sat in the back of the limousine in Greg Lake's seat with Keith and Carl, coming out of the stadium, and all the fans were sort of banging on the roof, and I was just thinking, I was almost speechless, really. I mean, my face must have been a picture, but I tried to kind of remain fairly level, but inside I was just thinking, I've got to remember this.
Oh, yes.
Kind of,
my
surreal.
gosh.
You couldn't buy that,
I wonder what it feels like to be a big star. Frank knows.
Yeah, I kind of know.
So let me ask you, what did you guys talk about in the limo? Was it just purely business, or did you guys have other discussions?
Well, it was random stuff. I mean, Keith was talking about cricket, which is an English sport. You probably don't get it over in America, but he was talking about cricket because he'd just been involved in a celebrity charity cricket match, and he hated it because the cricket ball's so hard, and he was a bit kind of scared of that. So he was talking about cricket and how, why would anyone want to hurl a ball down at 90 miles an hour? That's really hard, he couldn't understand that. And then, and the other thing I remember was that at that time in Japan in the mid-90s, there was a very popular little car made by Nissan called the Figaro, and it's quite a small little car, but it's kind of a retro style. I remember saying to Carl, that looks like Columbo's car, the TV show Columbo, looks like his car.
Yes.
And Carl said, yeah. Carl, he said Columbo drove a Peugeot. You actually remember that he drove a little Peugeot, sort of a 1950s French car, which was a similar shape, to these little Nissans. So we spoke about random stuff, nothing to do with music, and it was about a 20-minute drive back to the hotel. So yeah, it was just normal stuff.
That's funny.
I mean, Carl's got a great interest in cars, which we can talk about later. But yeah, we spoke about cars and cricket, and that's pretty much all I remember what we spoke about.
Well, I know that Carl has always been really fascinated with cars. I think from early on when he bought his first one, I thought it was a Rolls Royce, but I could be wrong. I don't really remember exactly, but I do know he loved to drive.
Yeah, and his first car was, I think, a Mini when he was with ELP. But then, and you can see it in the Manticore documentary, I know it looks like a Rolls Royce, but it's actually a Bentley.
Oh, Bentley. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a Bentley, which is similar to a Rolls Royce. So that's what he's had. But he's got a rich car history, as our Carl. He's had a ton of cars. He's had a number of Mercedes, the SL Mercedes. He also had a model called the 230C, not the CE. The C was the carburetted model, not the fuel injection, as he always pointed out. And he had that when he was in Tenerife, and he actually put on chrome wheel arches on that one, so it looked a little bit blingy. He's had Alfa Romeos, and he had the first Citroën CX. Citroën, again, French company, and they made a car in the 70s called the CX, which is a very futuristic looking car. And he had the first one on Tenerife. He tells this story. They had a problem. Citroën had a problem with the handbrake cables on the Citroën CX. And he was out in his garden one day, mowing his lawn or whatever he was doing, and he heard this crashing sound. He looked over, and his Citroën, and his driver was slightly slow, his Citroën just rolled down the bank, across the road, and ended up in a neighbour's garden, sort of bottom in, sticking up. And he quickly went over to the car and realised the handbrake cable had snapped. He took a picture. He told me he took a picture of the handbrake still on inside the car. Smart. Yeah, smart move. But the handbrake cable snapped, and the car just went careering off down the road and into a neighbour's garden. So he's had that. He's had a couple of Mercedes cars. He's had VWs. He's currently got a Porsche as sort of an occasional car. It's the last of the air-cooled ones. He's had a Land Rover, which he was very fond of, and he was in the Land Rover magazine, Owners Magazine, featured cars of the stars or something like that. And we also went during the high voltage rehearsals, July 2010. It was his 60th. That was his 60th year. He had his birthday in March, and his daughter Carissa wrote to a guy called Jeremy Clarkson, which I know loads of UK people heard of, and some people in America know Jeremy Clarkson and his program Top Gear. And Carissa wrote to Jeremy, knowing that he was a huge fan of ELP, and said, "Oh, my dad's Carl Palmer, and it's his 60th birthday. Would love to come and see a recording of Top Gear." Of course, Jeremy wrote straight back and said, "Absolutely love to have him over." So myself, Carissa, Carl, and his partner Katie, we all went to a recording of Top Gear, and then afterwards we had drinks with Jeremy Clarkson and James May, one of the other co-presenters. So that was really good, and to see Jeremy Clarkson sort of talking to Carl, and that was a lot of fun. So yeah, and we also went to a thing called the Goodwood Festival of Speed, which is a big event here in Sussex, near where I live, in the south of England, and it's a racetrack that's preserved in the sort of 1950s/60s vibe, and all the cars within the arena are no newer than 1966. So everything's very retro, and we all had to dress up in kind of retro clothes. So
oh really?
So I took up that, and he had a little yellow dicky bow and a waistcoat and a little monocle, and I had a flat pack and a pipe. We really got into it.
That's great. What did you wear?
I wore a tweed, very English, a tweed jacket, a cravat, flat cap, pipe, nice pair of brogues. I mean, I looked the part. You know, we all mucked in and looked very English.
What a great picture that would have been.
I've got a picture somewhere. I'll try and find it.
We would love to see that. We would love to see that. Oh, that would be great. You have to post that on the Titan site.
Yeah, he might kill me when he sees it, but yeah, it was a good. I remember he had this proper bow tie on, and I remember the morning he was staying at my house, and I remember in the morning he had YouTube up, watching how to properly tie a bow tie, you know, because it was a proper bow tie. It wasn't one you just sling on. Right. He was looking at the YouTube video, trying to follow it, trying to do up his bow ties.
Oh, good for him! Look at check him out. Little YouTube video. That's great. Now, we were also talking a little bit about a project that you and Carl work on regarding the drum circles in the UK and the drum clinics, and I thought maybe you could expand on that.
Yeah, that started in 1999. I did a bit of drum teaching in this drum school, and I got hold of Carl and said, would he come down and perhaps do a masterclass for the students of this drum school, and maybe do a clinic, a drum clinic where you hold it in a theatre, and Carl really demonstrates some of his drumming ability and tells stories and gives technique, all that sort of stuff. It's a really a good thing, and we did a few of those. But yeah, and so we did that one. He was so impressed how it went that he said to me, well, why don't we do, you know, the mini tour, bring up all the drum shops, or a lot of drum shops in the UK, and see if they want to hold these clinics. So we started doing that, and in the early 2000s that was quite popular. Now with the sort of YouTube and things like that you don't see so many of these drum clinics because you can see everything on YouTube. But we did 3-4 years of doing that together, and then we then started branching out a little bit and doing what we call drum circles, which when you get a group of people and you each give them a drum, and then you kind of do a bit of, it's like group drumming really. You don't have to be a drummer to do this. It's just team building, and we did Mercedes-Benz cars and other companies sort of for team building events. And then we found out that that maybe we branch this out to children, special needs children, perhaps with autism, maybe hearing impaired, sight impaired children. So we then started contacting these specialist schools. We visited them, and we found it really worked with even deaf children, because if you give them the drum, they can sort of put their feet, take their shoes off, put their feet on the base of the drum and feel the vibration. So we did a lot of this.
It's a great way for a person who can't hear to know what they're doing and how it's sounding in their head.
Yeah, they feel the vibration.
What challenges?
And then you have 60 children in the room. Yeah. I mean, we used to divide the room up into, if there was 60 children, you divide the room up into maybe 3 groups of 20. Mm-hmm. You get one group playing a particular rhythm, a second group playing a different one, and a third one. But it all sounds, when they're all playing different parts, but together it obviously sounds like one. So it was really good. There was a story we played in this. Did a drum circle in this place called Bradford, which is in the north of England, in Yorkshire, county called Yorkshire, and there were deaf children and there were sight impaired children as well. And we did this. We did it one year, and there was one young girl, and she didn't have any eyes. She literally just had, like as if her eyelids were closed. She had no eyes at all, but she was really into drumming. I mean, she was really enthusiastic, and she was sort of like a star performer, really. She was really into it. So there was that. And then a couple of years later, we went back to the same school, and we always made sure before before we kind of go live, we just make sure all the children are sat down, and we make sure the drums are all correct for them, the right size, the right style of drum. And Carl was just sort of checking on the children, and the same girl that we saw a couple of years ago, she just said, "Hello, Mr. Palmer, nice to meet you again." And he didn't say he was there, and he sort of said, "Wow, how did you know I was there?" And she just said, "I remember your smell." So that was, I know. So it's little things like that kind of stay with you, really. So Carl still remembers that today. Yeah. So
that
you get little moments like that.
That must have really struck Carl. Real personally.
Yeah, it was really, it's the sort of thing you think, wow,
Yeah.
So little things like that come out of it are really, really rewarding.
Yeah, we don't think about these kind of senses so much if we have all of our sight and sound. But people that are challenged in one way or the other, they look for their other avenues to grab their strength from. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I think that's great that you guys went out to set this up, to give the opportunity not only for others that just want to learn how to drum, but for children that would otherwise not have that opportunity. And I think that's really wonderful what you guys have done. My question is, do you have any of these in the United States or in any other place of the world, or is this just strictly UK?
It was just the UK. I mean, Carl's done drum clinics, so that's the sort of drumming, more for the drumming community. He's done those in the US, usually in conjunction with a drum retail shop. But we haven't branched out doing the drum circles to the US. It's logistically how we would work it, because yes, often he is in America, but he's usually there touring, and he doesn't usually combine the two things. If he's touring with either Asia or the ELP Legacy Band, that's what he does. And I think he's combining some of his art projects with the ELP Legacy Tour. But that's it's quite intense doing these drum circles, because you do them for about an hour at a time, and it is all go. There is a clip actually on YouTube, which I'll perhaps post on your Facebook page, and it shows what we do, and talks a little bit about what it means to the children, and etc. So I'll post that on there so you can have a look at it. Yes,
please. I would love to see that. That would be really wonderful. I think a lot of us would like to take a look at that. Now, I know that you have a couple stories that you're holding on to here that you're going to go ahead and let go of. So I'm going to let you talk about a couple of things that you've experienced while...
I was very lucky enough that Carl was actually my drum roadie for one gig. So when we were doing one of the...
Wait a minute. Okay, Carl was your roadie.
My roadie, yeah. I told him, it goes there and that goes there. And what it was, we were doing one of these these little mini tours that we did, doing clinics and things. I said to him, it's all well and good, we can do that, but on this particular Saturday, I've got a gig with my band. It was only a pub band, and we just did covers of Beatles and Rolling Stones and the Kinks and all that sort of stuff. Sure. Good 60s, 70s.
Oh yeah, it is good stuff.
And he said, that's fine, Frank, and no problems, I'll come along and support you. So it was in this pub in a place called Fareham, which is near Portsmouth, in the south of England. And so I had the van. We had a van at the time, whilst we were doing this little mini tour. So I put my drums in the back, got to the pub with Carl in the seat. And of course, the other guys in the band didn't know I was bringing Carl. So I opened the back of and he got the drums, and we took it into the pub. And they just went That's Carl Palmer. He's your yeah, he's my roadie for tonight. Yeah, I said, just put them down there. Put them down there. Can you get the other ones out? I was kind of bossing around a bit, you know, like a role reversal, really, because he bossed me around when I was not really, but he. So we had a bit of fun there. So he became my roadie, and then
That's so great.
I know, and I said to him, "You are going to play with the band." He said, "No, this is your night." Okay, I said, "No, please." He said, "No, it's your night." I said, "Okay." So I thought, oh, he's not going to play. So anyway, so I was just halfway through the gig, and we were just about to play a Kink song. You Really Got Me.
Oh, I love that song. In fact, I have the album.
Oh, right, yeah. So I'm thinking, right, okay, the guitarist starts off 2 bars of an intro, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just about to launch in, and I look up, and there's Carl standing right in front of my drum kit. And he's saying, "Can I do this one?" You know. Okay, so I got off my drums and gave him the sticks, and he did that. And then, of course, once he's on the drums, I couldn't get him off. So he did. I think he did Wipeout. He did Jumping Jack Flash.
Oh,
he did Standing There. He did about 5 or 6 numbers with our kind of pub band, you know, and. There you go.
Oh, so, now see, I want to hear that. I want the recording. Yeah. We all want a recording. That would have been awesome to have been able to watch Carl bust out, you know.
Yeah,
and
playing Beatles and Kinks and Rolling
Stones.
Stones.
Excellent choices. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that was a lot of fun. So that's a great story. Now, I know that you have
stories if you want. I got some stuff to share with you if you want.
Very good. I was hoping you'd get to that.
We'll talk about the book, because the book which you showed earlier.
Yes.
I think we got to the story where I went on tour with them in '96, and then. Despite the book being completed, we couldn't get a publisher. And this was around about 1997, 1998. We were really struggling to find a publisher, which is, we couldn't really quite believe it, really. So myself and George, we got a little bit frustrated. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Martin Hansen, who subsequently actually written books on The Nice and John Heisman and other bands. But at the time, Martin said, "Well, you know, what's going on with the book?" And I said, "Well, we've just run out of steam, really. We just hit a bit of a brick wall." And he sort of said, "Well, Carl, you know, we've got to do this. You know, you've got to do this. Can I perhaps interject some material and see if we can resurrect it?" And we kind of needed that little bit of a kick up the what's-its. So Martin sort of added some bits and bobs to it, and then we approached a company called Helter Skelter, the publishers, who eventually then took it on. And then we had the launch in 2000 in a place called Denmark Street, which is in London, and it's in the basement section. And it was a good event because Carl came along to do the signings, and it had queues. I remember the queues going up the stairs, out of the shop, down the road. So it was a good event. And the book was launched with a hardback.
Oh.
Yeah. No, I can't do that with this one.
No. Oh, my goodness. Talk about that one.
And he's...
there it is. Oh, let me see. To Frank, you are the man, Greg Lake. To Frank, let's have some fun. Carl Palmer, 2000. And, oh my gosh, to Frank, best wishes, Keith Emerson. Oh my goodness sakes, what a treasure.
There's only 500 of these like that. This is number 5 of the 500.
And I wonder how... I'm sorry for interrupting, but I wonder how many of those limited editions have all those signatures like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's possibly others. All of the other ones, all the other 499 have got my signature in it, Martin's and George's. well, I didn't want my signature in it. I didn't want George or Martin. It's not that I'm leaving, but I just wanted my book to be kind of left alone and just really have the signatures of 3 guys. So I know that my one is the only one that doesn't have the author's signatures in it. So quite pleased with that one. Then in 2006, so 6 years after the book was launched, we were asked by Helter Skelter to do a rewrite of the book and bring it a bit more up to date.
Oh.
So we did. We started to do that, and we got it all finished. And in fact, it was advertised on Amazon, and then sadly, Sean Bodie, who was the managing director of Helter Skelter, who was really instrumental in getting our first book published and out. Unfortunately, Sean Bodie contracted leukemia, and I'm afraid to say he passed away just prior to the book coming out. And also it meant that Helter Skelter hit some rocky times, and they couldn't eventually proceed with the book.
That's too
But
bad.
this actually is the book.
Oh my.
And you know, it's got tons of pictures in there, and it's the only, there's only 10 of these in the world, I'm afraid to say, and it really is a great book, and it never saw light of day, which is a big regret really, because Helter Skelter ceased business, and we couldn't get that book out. We were signed. We were tied in to a contract with Helter Skelter, even though they ceased trading. They still, we were still tied into a contract until 2010, and then we were approached by another company, Forley Books, Feruli, to produce this one, and this again is written up to 2000 or just after High Voltage.
Okay. Okay. Just after 2010 then.
Yeah, 2010. This is a hardback. There's only 50 of these.
Hardback.
Again, I'm lucky enough to have.
Here we go. To Frank. Thanks, old boy, Carl Palmer. Oh my gosh.
There's only 50 of those, but I think you can certainly pick these up on. You can still pick up the paperback version.
Yes, you can get that on Amazon, right? I think I've also seen it in eBay too.
Okay, yeah.
So
yeah,
I think
eBay store, you could get the hardback ones as well. So
yes, I'm looking for the hardback. I haven't been able to find one yet on eBay, but I am keeping a sharp eye.
Yeah, so
I would love to get one of those.
And then the other thing I've got that's maybe of interest to some people, a company made Carl Palmer's drumsticks, a company called Promark. They've made his drumsticks for a long time now, and they were commissioned to do a run of drumsticks to celebrate ELP's 25th anniversary. Now, I don't know if you can read that.
Yes, I can. Let's see. It says the 25th anniversary tour, 1969 to 1994. And we have, of course, Manticore. Oh, let's see. PD got that. And there's Carl Palmer's signature.
Right, on the Manticore sign.
Yes.
Well, of course, we all know that 1969 is the incorrect date. It should have been 1970 to 1995.
Oh.
So there's a whole batch of these drumsticks that went out with the incorrect dates on it. So that's quite a rarity.
That would be.
So that was a bit of a faux pas.
Yes, that's something, when they make these little errors and then catch it and then pull everything back, there are some that get out, and those are ones to hang on to for sure. And if you can get them signed like yours.
The same mistake was actually made on his drum kit that he used from 96 through to 98, which is the white Remo kit with the ELP crest on there.
Yes.
And Remo made that drum kit for him, and they put the wrong dates on that as well. So the same person who gave Promark the information gave Remo the information. So I'm not sure if he's still got a job.
I think they need to look at the status of the employee that keeps making the wrong date.
Ex-employee now. So,
Yeah. But tell me something about this book. I noticed, obviously, we all know that there are 3 writers on there.
Yeah.
You yourself, of course, one. And my question to you is, why these 3 guys? Why 3 authors for this book?
We're 3 fans, so we were never writers to start with, and we all specialised, I suppose. And George was a piano player and was very technical and understood musical theory, so he seemed the right person to talk about the music analysis and how the songs are constructed. And obviously a big fan of Keith, so he seemed the right person to talk about Keith. And myself, on the drumming side of it, felt I could do a job on the Carl Palmer side. And originally it was just myself and George. We sort of collaborated on the Greg Lake side, but when Martin came in, Martin sort of said, well, I know quite a bit about Greg, so really it was almost one author per member. And then obviously we all collaborated on the discography and the tour dates, which is towards the end of the book. And I think my Japanese tour diary that I kept is in there as well. So it was a real collaborative effort. And really we had the specialist tasks, as I say, George for Keith, Martin for Greg, and myself doing the Carl section. And that remained pretty much all the way through, even to the subsequent version.
That's probably one reason why this book is so popular and so many ELP fans have purchased this book, because I found it myself to be very detailed, and I think that it made a lot of sense to have a technical person and someone who actually plays the instruments to be individually placed with each one of the members. And that's pretty smart. I think that was a very well chosen path to take, because this book is quite a book. I find it my #1 ELP book that I go to. That's why I have all these. I refer back to them.
The latest version is pretty much rewritten as well, and we had new interviews with people like William Neal, who did the artwork for a couple of the albums, and Godfrey Salmon we spoke to, who's the conductor for the Olympic Stadium concert, amongst all the other orchestra tour dates they did. And then of course it's got the high voltage stuff. So the new version isn't just the old version with a new chapter stuck on the end. It's quite substantially rewritten, so it's worth, I think, worth
I think I'll be picking up myself another book. I think I got something new to read. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you, Frank. I'm glad you guys went and did that, because, a lot has happened since the first book was out, and ELP was still going really strong, and it made sense to go back and look at doing a rewrite and catching us all up with what's been going on since the book had come out.
Yeah.
So that made a lot of sense. I'm glad you guys did that very much. Now, I heard a rumor about a girlfriend that you had.
Yes.
That something happened while...
Yeah, she fainted in Carl's dressing room. That story, I know.
That's what I thought I heard.
Yeah. She's not a fan of ELP particularly. Sandy likes some of the Greg Lake stuff. She likes I Believe in Father Christmas, and she likes some of the softer side of the ELP. And she actually prefers Asia over ELP. She really likes Asia. And we were at an Asia concert in Bournemouth, which is the hometown of Greg Lake, and also where John Wetton, who lived.
Oh.
Anyway, Asia were playing in Bournemouth, so we went along to see them. And after the gig, we went back to Carl's dressing room, just having a chat, and suddenly Sandy just felt all a little bit woozy and a bit faint, and she almost sort of passed out, really. And Carl thought it was hilarious because he's never had a girl faint in his dressing room since the early 70s. So it's kind of...
Since the early 70s.
This is brilliant. It's ages since I've had a girl faint in a dressing room. So that was the story there. I think it was just really hot in his dressing room, and with a little bit of water she came round again. But she swears it was nothing to do with being starstruck. She just thought she all came over a bit hot and a bit,
Yes,
faint.
but we don't have to say that.
No. Carl thought it was great, and it was, took him right back to the early 70s.
Oh my gosh, that must have been absolutely hysterical in one way, and probably...
I know. She's never going to live that one down.
No, I don't think so. And now that we all have heard the story, she won't live it down for a very long time. We were talking. We were talking about something about a birthday cake.
Wasn't it? Was the anniversary? You're talking about the cake that we made for ELP at their high voltage 40th
That would
anniversary.
be the one. Yes.
That would be the one. The infamous cake.
The infamous cake story.
Yeah. So myself and Tony Ortiz, who I know everybody will know of Tony Ortiz,
Yes.
the great Tony Ortiz,
Yes.
a very dear friend of mine. He was coming over to England, and he said, "We've got to do a cake, Frank. You've got to make a cake." I said, "I don't make cakes." I said, "I know you don't make cakes, but you've got to get a cake sorted out." Oh, okay.
Oh, good.
And it's got to be special. It can't be just a cake with happy anniversary ELP. It's got to be proper,
Yes.
So he said, "I'll leave it to you, Frank." Oh, thanks, Sam. So I thought, wow. So Sandy, the girl who fainted in the dressing room, she knows this really talented cake maker. I thought we've got to go and see her. So we contacted her and said, "Can you do a really super duper cake for ELP's 40th anniversary?" She said, "Of course I can, yeah. Bring me round photos, pictures, everything you've got, and I'll see what I can do." So I took round pictures of everything I could think of, and she put together the most amazing cake, which I'm sure a lot of people have seen on some of the photos. But it had Keith with the Moog, it had Greg stood on a carpet, and it had Carl at the back with the gongs, and a pretty good replica of his stainless steel kit.
Yes.
And it was a work of art. It really was. And so that was something that I had to then get transported from my house. I remember getting a taxi company to deliver it from my house to Tony's hotel room in London, because Tony made it across. It was a couple of days before the show. I got the taxi company to send this cake up to Tony's hotel, so it was up in London. So Tony took care of it, and then I remember it was a very hot day, and I remember we were carrying it. We took it in turns carrying this cake, which is very heavy.
I can imagine.
Quite heavy. We knew we had to get it to the backstage area, pretty much undercover, so that ELP didn't see it. And so it was a very hot day, and I do remember putting it. One of us put it on the ground, and we just thought, "Oh, she's got to have a little bit of a drink." And it was on the ground, and we looked down. It was covered in cellophane, but it's a couple of ants. I know. A couple of ants started sort of getting into the cake, and we had to pick it up quickly and get the ants off it, and think, it's the first time I've ever told that story, so I apologise to everyone who's eaten the cake. But so we presented it anyway. We eventually got it to the backstage area undercover, and then after the show, we obviously made a big deal and presented it to the guys. And I just remember silly things like Carl chopping his own head off and eating it, and Keith getting the knife and sticking it in like it was a Hammond organ. All those little things going on. So it was a great moment. And there's a little YouTube clip, which again I'll send to you. You can put up. It's a YouTube clip of the cake being presented, and
wonderful.
So,
yes, I know our members would love to see that. I think I also have a picture of the cake with all of you behind it. And I'll go look for that, and I'll post that in the archives file or library for our interview today, and then I'll also post that in the Titans group site. So, because that cake was fantastic, and for those of you who know what we're talking about, you guys will agree that was one spectacular cake, and
it tasted very good. I tell you what, it did taste really, really good.
It looked like it would. It really looked like something you wanted to stick a fork in somewhere.
But that picture actually it means a lot to me because it had Tony Ortiz in there.
Yes,
and of course, it's the last picture of VLP together, and I was really honoured to be part of that image. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, sad to think that there's 3 of the guys in that photo aren't with us anymore. Just myself and Carl left. So yeah, very sad.
Yes, it is. I'm trying to recall other things that we discussed. I think that we have touched on everything. We talked about your first meeting with Carl. We've talked about some of the fun stories that you got to fall into, and those are all great to hear, and hear about not only your first book but the new book, which some people may not be aware of, is out there at Amazon, and it's still the same title, if I'm correct. The Emerson Lake Palmer, the show that never ends, with a black and white cover. And what was it, orange, or is it a yellow circle?
So the hardback ones have got the red one,
got
and
the
then
red
the paperback have got the yellow one. It's called Encore. So show never ends. Encore.
Oh, got it. Thank you. Very good. Yes. Hold that up for me for just a second. I just want to make sure that people are able to see exactly what that is. The show that never ends, Encore. That's outstanding. I'm definitely going to go pick that up and give that a good read. And I think we've talked about the drum clinics and how your book was stalled and then how it became revived and put out there for us. And on behalf of all of us, we thank you so much for being persistent, not giving up on your goal of having an Emerson Lake and Palmer book that is written as a musical biography, and that has opened, I know, my eyes to a lot of things I didn't know. And a lot of musicians, they can read the technical things that are in here as well on the instruments themselves and how they're played or set up, and it just covers everybody across the board with this book. It's just excellent. And I was wondering if there was anything that we haven't touched on that we should still talk about.
Noddy's Puncture.
That's right. See, I knew there was something in the back of my head, and that's why I thought I'm going to throw you the coin for a second. So yes, let's talk about you, the drummer of Noddy's Puncture, which is one of the absolute greatest tribute bands, and something that I had learned earlier was you're not really a tribute band, because you were actually established when ELP was still ELP and touring, correct?
I wasn't part of the band at that point. The band started in the mid-'80s, but it wasn't an ELP tribute band. It was a classic rock band. Tom Zackerley was in the band.
Yes.
They did lots of other tracks and a couple of ELP tracks that Tom always wanted ultimately to do and to have an ELP tribute band, totally ELP. And as members left Noddy's Puncture, new ones came in, Tom would say he would gradually introduce more and more ELP stuff to the point when eventually he could introduce members who just did play ELP stuff. And I joined the band in 2016, I think it was. I'd always said I remember saying to I knew Tom way back actually in the mid-90s because there was a 25th anniversary ELP convention. And I was in a band called Work 3, which is an ELP band, and Tom's band, Noddy's Puncture, also played in the same event. And so I'd known Tom a long time. And I remember saying at the High Voltage, he was telling me that they'd done a couple of Noddy's Puncture gigs in and around the High Voltage, the dates, sort of July. But unfortunately, for one or two of them, his current drummer wasn't available, couldn't make the gig. And I just say to him, look, if you ever need any help with anything drum-wise, just give me a call, And I got that call in 2016 when he said, can you help me out? So I've been part of the band since then. And for me, it's just such an amazing experience because Tom and Ed are very particular about getting every nuance spot on. They both know the music inside out, similar to myself. So we're very, very kind of very mindful that we're trying to recreate not just playing the notes, not just creating the correct sound by Tom's use of the correct equipment, like a modular, Leslie speakers, Hammond, same Hammond that Keith Emerson used, and he does, as you've seen, he does all the knife and stuff like that. It's not just playing the notes, it's playing the way and the feel of ELP. So people got to understand that ELP in the early 70s particularly weren't very neat and tidy. It wasn't all in the pocket, nice, comfortable groove type. It was intense. It was on the edge, almost the point of pushing, propelling, driving on. So we try and recreate not just the notes, but the musical feel and intensity of the early ELP, because both Keith and Carl would really be pushing and driving it on, and that's what we try and recreate that vibe as well. And I think particularly with Tom, having known Keith really, really well, and he used to converse with Keith on certain keyboard fingerings and sound settings, etc., etc. We've got somebody there who's utterly devoted to the ELP sound. So I'm really, really privileged to be part of that band, and I know we're trying to rehearse. Actually, we rehearse online.
Oh my goodness, online!
I live in the south of England. Tom lives in Rochdale, which is in the sort of middle of the country, and Ed, he lives in Newcastle upon Tyne. So if you looked at a map of the UK, we couldn't be further apart if we tried. We have, there's a backstory to this, but we started rehearsing using a software program called eJamming. So I used to plug my electronic drums into a laptop. Tom did the same with his keys, and Ed did the same with his guitars. We'd dial up this software program, put our headphones on, and we could all hear each other, and we'd rehearse. We did that for a couple of years, and then I've the last couple of years, I've been building my own house, which is now finished.
Congrats!
And I've just built a drum studio above the garage, which is pretty much done. I know Tom's been questioning, when am I going to rehearse, Frank? When am I going to rehearse? And I've told him next week, Tom. I feel like I've been saying next week for the last 2 or 3 months. But
it'll happen.
Because he's just dead keen to rehearse, and quite rightly. So pretty much what you see on YouTube recently, we've been really just having the odd rehearsal here and there at Tom's place, but we will get back into rehearsing online now that I'm 99.9% there. I hope Tom's watching this. telling him this now. But yeah, that's how we really rehearse. Has been the bulk of our set has been learnt online, and then we get together occasionally at Tom's place just to kind of be in the same room and get it all tightened up.
Yeah. That must have its challenges at times, trying to do these things online, because I know when you're in a band, being together is when you really get most of your work done. And
yeah, I mean, and it's obviously complex music, so it's not as if it's a blues track or something like that. So, but it's better than not rehearsing, and you can get to a point when you discuss stuff and you've arranged it, and then when you get into a room together, you're 99% there. Really, it's just so it's a means to an end. Really, it's better than not rehearsing for sure.
Oh yeah.
So it is good. But we've got. Funnily enough, I've just read a message from Tom. We have got a gig. So this is for the UK. We have got a gig in Rochdale on August the 31st. Confirmed. So that's near where Tom lives, and so I'm sure that will go up. But that's hot off the press. And then next year, there's a couple of things that are being considered, which is ELP's 50th anniversary, of course, next year.
Yes.
So we're looking at doing an ELP convention, which I know Tom is involved in.
Oh my goodness!
So we're going to have some special guests, some from America, some from the UK. So that's going to be. Don't know when the date is on yet, because it very much depends on the availability of certain people.
Sure.
So that's going to happen. And also, we've been asked to play at the 50th anniversary Isle of Wight festival, where they're getting together some tribute bands of The Who.
Oh my!
Who else is it? Jimi Hendrix, The Doors.
The Doors, yes.
So they're looking to put on a 50th anniversary Isle of Wight festival played by tribute bands. So, and that's been suggested that it's the same dates as it was in 1970. So it's a weekend, end of August 2020. But again, once we know more, we'll let you know.
Yes, hopefully we can have those really close together so that people like myself that may want to come over for that convention definitely would want to see the Isle of Wight, recreation, because that was the beginning of their stardom, and there were so many great bands that played there that time, and that would be amazing. It's almost like a time capsule, and it's you'd be hearing music that probably sounds exactly like the original music, and it'd be pretty incredible even to just close your eyes for a second and just take it in. Just take it in.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to that.
Now, and regarding Noddy's Puncture, there was something that I saw, and it made me want to ask you a question about how did Keith Emerson learn about Noddy's Puncture? Because I was under the impression that ELP really didn't know Noddy's Puncture was playing ELP music at that time. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I'll try and tell the story as best I can, but Tom will tell you for sure that it goes something like this. Tom wanted to bring Noddy's Puncture down to a pub called the Six Bells, and that's in a place called Chillingly, which is Keith Emerson's local pub. And so Tom brought the band down in the hope that Keith, who used to go to this pub quite a lot, would come along and see the band. And Keith got to find out, because he knew the landlord of the Six Bells. He knew that a band's coming down, they play all your stuff, Keith, you've got to come and watch them. And it was, I think it was a big surprise to Tom when Keith actually did turn up in the pub to see Noddy's Puncture playing. And I mean, Tom's friendship with Keith goes back a long time, so I'm not sure in what order, whether that was the beginning or he knew on YouTube before that. But if you check with Tom, he'll tell you the full story. But it's simply because he played in Keith's local pub, and Keith turned up. And again, it's on YouTube. You can see Keith jamming with Tom.
Yes, in fact, I have seen that video, and the first time I saw it, I didn't realize then, I didn't know a lot about Noddy's Puncture, and being in the U.S. I saw Keith step up on the stage with Tom, and I stood back and go, wait a minute, Keith is still here, which means Greg is still here. Wait a minute, when was this done? And this is not a tribute band. This is something special. And
I know.
It's a great video that I recommend everybody watch on YouTube with Noddy's Puncture. It's absolutely spectacular watching Tom and Keith play together.
We've also had, we did a show and we had Emerson, Keith's son, come up and jam with us on Fanfare. And we'll hope to get, at some stage, we'll get Ethan up as well, because Ethan, as you know, is a very talented piano player.
Yes.
And he's played a couple of gigs with us. And we're also honoured to play at the Birmingham Symphony Hall Keith Emerson Memorial Tribute Concert, organised by a guy called Jim Davidson. I don't know if you know, he's a very big star in the UK, big friend of Keith's. He was his best man at his third wedding, I think. He's a comedian, a huge ELP fan. Always uses ELP music in his shows and his TV programs, so he always was a big promoter of the band. But anyway, Jim organised this memorial concert. Rick Wakeman played, Ethan played, Aaron played, Rachel Flowers played.
Oh my goodness sakes.
We played. So it was a fantastic experience. So yeah, we are really honoured. And obviously you've got to remember Tom was Keith's official stalker for a number of years. But out of that, they became really, really close friends. And Tom is very close with Aaron and Ethan and Joe Emerson. So he's a big friend of the family. He's a lovely guy, and I know Keith was fond of him. And Tom can carry on the keeping the music alive in the way that he does, which I think is the most accurate recreation of Keith Emerson's work.
Yes.
Is what Tom does.
Oh, excuse me. I don't think that anybody has the talent that Tom has when it comes to actually copying and getting down the performances of Keith when he's playing. Keith does a lot of different things: upside down playing, backwards playing, throwing knives and jumping on top, and whips and swords and all kinds of stuff, and and picking it up and whatnot. And Tom just is right there. He has it down.
There's the ribbon controller, and he does it properly.
He does. And in fact I'm really hoping that when I do get over there, that Noddy's Puncture will be playing, so I can actually see you in person. I would just really...
Yeah. Let us know when you're coming over, and we'll fix it.
Oh yes, I certainly will do that. Now, I think we've covered what we wanted to talk about, and unless there's something that I've missed.
No, I think we're all good. I think we've covered pretty much everything that I had on my list as well.
Oh, good. Well, I want to thank you humbly for the Emerson Lake and Palmer Titans of Prague members that will be watching this or are watching this now. And we really thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your time to talk with us. You've given us such a window that we haven't seen before with Frank Askew, and the amazing stories and memories that you have it's been wonderful to hear all of these things. And I know that there'll be lots of conversations about what you've had to say that's new to us. And we have new members, and so yeah, this is really appreciated very, very much. You've opened the door. You've really opened the door. And again, you can get Frank Askew's book on Amazon, and it is newly updated and full of wonderful new stuff. And I know I'm going to head there after this. I got to pick my ass a coffee up. I got something to read. So it's been a real pleasure talking with you, Frank. Thank you so very much.
Thanks. I've enjoyed sharing the stories. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. And we will talk again, hopefully sometime where we'll bring you back, and we will do some more things for everybody, and maybe give us some more updates on the convention and also on the Isle of Wight remake. So looking forward to hearing about lots of wonderful stuff going on. Thank you.
Hopefully there's good stuff next year. Being the 50th anniversary, let's hope there's lots of stuff going on.
It's going to be huge. I hope to be there. What do they say? I'll be there. I'll be there. I will be there. Anyway, thank you so much, Frank. I will let you go. And from we are talking to you from Backstage Pass with exclusively on the Emerson Lake Palmer Titans of Prague group site. And if you're not a member and would like to view this interview again, you can do so by requesting membership, and you will be automatically added to our archive library, where you can see this interview and all our interviews as we progress forward. So thank you. And you have a great evening. I know that you're over there. It's nighttime now for you, and lunchtime for me. So I will enjoy my lunch. You enjoy your evening. Thank you, Frank, very much.
Cheers, Dyanne.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care, too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.